Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the political compass test, and I'm going to be updating what I have done on it. So I last took this test, I think, 7 or 8 months ago, so my views have, of course, changed, as they should. I think that, it's good that your views evolve over time. You shouldn't really, I haven't really shifted too much, or I haven't really switched an ideology, I guess, but I have changed my views on certain issues, and people have asked me to do this test again. So I'm going to take it again. Also, I didn't really have any video ideas, so I guess I'll give the people what they want for today. So, again, this is not a survey. These aren't questions. They're propositions. To question the logic of an individual and to irritate you to miss the point. So these are loaded questions. Like they said, the purpose of these propositions is to trigger reactions in the mind, measuring feelings and prejudices rather than detailed opinions on policy. So this isn't really like a policy test. You can get a left-leaning score on the test and still be a very conservative Republican. It's asking you, they're just trying to elicit a certain reaction, as they said. So, the test isn't perfect. I think there are actually better tests, but this is the most well-known test, and I think it's the most interesting, so I'll be taking it. So, the first question is, if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I would agree with that, but again, the question is it's a proposition that's biased. Now, I'm pretty sure that I think the vast majority of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, would agree that, if economic globalization does happen, it should serve the interests of humanity rather than transnational corporations. But whether that's possible or whether that's actually going to happen is, I guess, a different thing. I don't support my country, whether it's right or wrong. I strongly disagree with this one. So I am a proud American, and I do think that America is one of the greatest countries in the world. But if the United States is committing genocide, which I'm not suggesting they are, and they're not doing that right now. But if they were to do that, I would certainly not support them. And I'd be vehemently anti whatever that government is, whether it's a conservative or a liberal government. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. I strongly disagree with this. I think everyone should be proud of their country of birth. Like I said, as an American, I didn't choose my country of birth, but I was born in the United States, and I'm very proud of it, so I disagree with that. Our race has many superior qualities compared to other races. No, I disagree with that. I'm a proponent of the belief that everyone is equal, no matter the color of their skin, so this is a proposition I strongly disagree with. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, this question is fundamentally flawed because you can't answer this question without being given a situation. So I usually would agree with this, but you can twist this to a certain situation where I strongly disagree. But I'll say agree, but not strongly agree. Military action that defies international laws is unjustified. Again, this is a very, very weird question, and I'm not an expert on international law, especially in terms of what's considered a crime and what's not, internationally speaking. I do think that it's very good that we have, for example, the Geneva Conventions or stuff like that, where we talk about you can't do this no matter what because it is inhumane and violates basic human rights. So I'm going to say I agree with this because I'm not an expert on international law. I'm not sure whether there are loopholes in that or something that the United States could hypothetically say this is somewhat okay. So I'm going to say agree, but usually I'd say no, you should always follow international law. There's not a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I strongly agree with this, but I don't think it's specific to 2021. I think there's always been it, but I think we're talking about it more in 2021. The economy. So talking attitudes here, not the FTSE index. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. So I actually strongly agree with this. And this is something that my opinions have changed on over the past, 2 years maybe. So, I originally would have said strongly disagree, but I think that, people are ultimately more divided by, like this question says, than by class than by nationality because, for example, I do believe that there is racism in America. And I do believe that needs to be addressed. But I think that it is more, there is less of a difference, I guess you could say, that there is less of a difference between, I guess it's hard to explain, but maybe I'd say there is less of a difference between a black person and a white person than there is between a rich white person and a poor white person, if that makes sense. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that racism in America doesn't exist. It does, but I do think that ultimately people are more divided by class than by nationality or by wealth, I guess you could say. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I disagree with this. I think that, inflation is, of course, an issue, but I'd rather have high inflation than a high percentage of unemployed people. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I strongly agree with this. There are some good corporations out there that are doing a good job of, I guess, protecting the environment, but we can't just trust, okay, well, hopefully you guys don't chuck plastic into the ocean, right? So the government does need to regulate corporations in terms of this. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. I agree with this. I don't think that it's how government should work, but it is a fundamentally good idea. The fear of the market, the fear of the people. I strongly disagree with this. I think that that's actually not true. In fact, capitalism is a system of government that is flawed, as is communism, by the way. I'm not a communist, but capitalism requires regulation. Sometimes we need to save capitalism from itself. And, if you just have completely free market capitalism, and by the way, America is the United States is not a free market country. The United States is a country that has a lot of regulation. In fact, if we had an entirely free market, someone could just build an airplane, say, okay, we're going to fly in this now, and when you get in the airplane, it would obviously be unsafe, and it would crash, and you'd have hundreds of people dying who were in that airplane. Because the government does inspect airplanes, before they are released to the public to make sure that they're safe, that they're effective, because we do need to ensure that there are basic safety precautions for everything, and that's why we have, GMO labels, or nutrition labels on food, or, since the early 1900s, we've been, looking at milk to make sure that it doesn't give severe diseases to pregnant women, or to young children, or, to everyone. So, the freer the market, the freer people is a fundamentally bad idea. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. I mean, I wish water was free, but I don't think this doesn't make a ton of sense. We essentially disagree. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. I strongly disagree with that. Again, ideally everyone would have an equal amount of land, but that's not the case. And in today's society, it is a commodity that should be bought and sold, and that's the way that the game is played. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simulate. So, I mean, I agree with the fact that it is regrettable, but I'm not suggesting that billionaires are evil people, and I'm not suggesting that they should have all their money taken away. But I do think that it's somewhat regrettable because of the fact that the majority of wealth in America is kind of, I'd say, inherited wealth, or wealth that was gotten from investing in the stock market and getting lucky. So I wouldn't say it's regrettable. I think it's unfortunate that we have such a big wealth gap in the United States. So moving on, protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I'll say disagree with this. I'm not really an expert on trade, but I think to a certain extent protectionism is a decent idea, but the United States is very bad at it. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Well, this really is the only social responsibility. So if it was just the only responsibility period of a company, then I'd say no. But it really says what the only social responsibility. So I'm going to say disagree, because I do think the companies do have at least some responsibility to the citizens, to their customers, to make sure that their products are safe, or that if they're selling food, that the food isn't going to give them food poisoning and kill them, right? So, obviously, delivering profit to its shareholders is important for a company. It's how good companies work, but, you can, if a company, it would be unethical for a company to just be making a ton of money by scamming people or hurting people. So I'm going to say disagree. The rich are too highly taxed. Strongly disagree. The average working class person paid more money in taxes than Amazon, because corporations in America are not taxed. That's an issue. It's not really rich people. Like, obviously, I don't think that Jeff Bezos is paying his fair share of taxes, but there's a bigger issue than that. those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. I strongly agree with this. So I was just talking about how the rich are too highly taxed, but the rich aren't. Because look, this really comes down to, do I support Medicare for all? And I'll be straight. I do not. And I'll be straight about this. I do not support Medicare for all. I think that it's a good idea that we have a social safety net in terms of healthcare, because I do think that healthcare is a basic human right and that every American should have access to some level of healthcare. But when you try to level the playing field, that's a waste of money, because Jeff Bezos doesn't need government funded healthcare. The U.S. government should not have to pay $20,000 something dollars for Jeff Bezos to get government funded healthcare. What should be happening is that someone like Jeff Bezos should be able to buy, to go to whatever insurance company he wants to go to and say, I want to have high quality standards of healthcare. I'll give you a ton of money for it. Not everyone's going to be able to afford that, so they do deserve basic healthcare from the government. But Jeff Bezos, if he wants to pay more money for healthcare, he can knock himself out. He's more than welcome to do that. But the everyday American might not be able to afford that, so there should be a basic safety net for everyday Americans, but not for billionaires. Don't need that, and we'd be wasting our money trying to give billionaires healthcare that they don't want and that they could do better. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I agree with this. It's pretty simple. Government needs to regulate business, and when business does something bad, I would say that they need to be penalized. A genuine free market requires restrictions. Yes, so I strongly agree with this. Now, I'm not saying that we should there's been this people have been talking about we should just get rid of Google. No, the people. By the way, the people who are saying to get rid of Google, to disband Twitter, disband Amazon, those people are probably they probably read those they probably got that from some post on Google, they tweeted it on Twitter, and they probably ordered something from Amazon. So getting rid of these companies, because they do make our lives easier. I'm going to be uploading this video to a platform that is owned by Google. YouTube is making my life easier, and to get rid of those corporations, that's really a bad idea, and I think it would backfire. What we do need to happen is that they should be paying higher taxes, and they should also, realistically speaking, be regulated by the government more so than they are, because Amazon is creating monopolies, and that's an issue, because in the future they'll be able to raise, for example, they'll be able to raise the price whenever they want and just destroy small businesses that have the same kind of I guess because Amazon does rob small businesses of sales every day, and I think 14 small businesses go out of business a week because of Amazon. So it's certainly an issue, and I do think it's hurting the economy, but I wouldn't say that I'm not in support of just breaking up these corporations entirely, I guess. So, social values. So some of these questions are going to be divisive, and I hope that I'm going to get at least one comment about this, but I hope that the comment section stay civil and respectful, because not fun when it's not. Anyways, abortion when the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. I'm gonna say disagree with this. I don't think it's the government's job to stick their nose in a conversation between a woman and her doctor. There should be regulations. Obviously, I'm not in support of legal abortion after the first trimester, but there should be a period where a woman should be able to do what she needs to do for her body. All authority should be questioned. I agree with this. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I agree with this overall. It's not a fundamentally good idea to run a government on. That's basically communism, but it is still a value that I guess I hold at a smaller level. Taxpayers should not be expected to propagate. Yeah, I always get confused by this. I'll just say agree, because the questions. This is a loaded question, but whatever. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. So I'm assuming that they're saying that like you're getting homeschooled. That's fine too. So I'm gonna say disagree with this, because I do think that kids up until the end of kids should be required to go to kindergarten or preschool through elementary school, I guess. No, what am I saying? Preschool through high school, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I guess that the U.S. government should say, okay, you have to be going to school. That's whether that be at home, getting homeschooled by your parents, or going to public school or private school. But yeah, All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us, the different sorts of people keep to their own kind. I mean, I strongly disagree with this, because this question, I think, is rooted in racism, because that's like saying, okay, well, this kind of just streams separate but equal to me, and I'm not, obviously, that is a very flawed idea. Good parents don't have to spank their children. I strongly disagree with this. There have been studies that have showed that when you use when you use physical punishment to try to teach your kids a lesson, it results in psychological problems for them, which is it results in psychological problems for them. So that is obviously not what I think most good parents would want. I messed up on this. Agree, disagree. I guess I'll say agree, disagree. Strongly disagree. Oh yeah, here we go. So I'm gonna say strongly disagree with that. It is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Yeah, I mean, I strongly agree with this. So yeah, possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Yeah, I agree with this. I mean, you probably shouldn't be smoking weed, but it shouldn't be a criminal offense because it's my body, my choice. But really, the main issue that America has isn't that that the idea of weed being illegal is a bad idea. It's just that racism in America has resulted in so many more black people, or just or minorities in general, or people from underprivileged communities being arrested, which is a really bad thing for the United States. So I think the war on drugs was a big mistake, and I think that's why my positions on personal use of marijuana are so much more liberal than they really, I guess, could be. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. I disagree with this. I think that could be one of the functions of education, but I can't really define what the prime function should be. People with some serious inheritable disability should not be allowed to reproduce. No, I disagree with this. My body, my choice. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Strongly disagree. There are much more important things for children to learn than to accept discipline. I think intelligence, having a good work ethic, kindness, those are things far more important than learning to accept discipline. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. I disagree with this, but I'd say that I would agree with this 95% of the time, but overall, no. So, for example, I don't think that people who have different beliefs or cultures than I do are savage, that I'm somehow more civilized than them. But there are certain cultures that are toxic, like, for example, the Taliban is the Taliban is technically a culture. That's not a culture that I think should be treated equally, because it's a harmful and toxic culture, to say the least. Same with, I guess terrorists or people that, and you can even apply this to smaller groups. Like there's, I guess, certain groups of people that, have their own culture that's very unproductive or toxic or hurts society. So I'm going to say disagree, but I'd say overall, 99% of the time, yeah, people are sure that the cultures are equal, but there's always bad apples. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. I agree with this, but I don't think we should do it with welfare, for example. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. It's not better to do this, but this is something I do, so I guess I'll say agree. But I wish I would disagree with this question, but unfortunately I do not. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Yeah, I'd say that. Strongly disagree. I randomly just did not process that question, so I'd say strongly disagree, because you can immigrate to a country and have both the values of the country you came from and the country that if someone from Mexico comes to the United States, you can have both the values of your of the culture from your old country and your new country. So I would say I strongly disagree with this. What's good for most successful corporations is good for us. I strongly disagree for obvious reasons. Corporations can literally scam you. If a corporation, or if Safeway was to, or Safeway or Whole Foods, and anything of big corporations that are grocery, Safeway, Whole Foods, Publix. So like if I went to Whole Foods and they sold me like a piece of cake and it was poisoned, and they made $20 off me. Obviously, I wouldn't pay $20 for a piece of cake, but if that hypothetically happened, they'd be gaining money, and it would be good for them, but it would obviously not be good for me. So, strongly disagree with this, and I think this question is very loaded. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I mean, yeah, I guess I'll agree with that. So it's just mostly because there aren't too many independent broadcasting institutions. Now, page 4 of 6 is talking about how I see the wider society. So we're gonna read this next question. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. So I disagree with this, and I can really go either way on this question. It really depends on how you interpret it, but I'm just gonna say disagree for right now. But again, it really varies by what you count as counterterrorism, because it's intentionally vague. So I'm guessing they're just trying to make me think about whether I'm more pro-big government or pro-small to libertarian government, so I think that's what it's asking me about. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay process in a democratic system. I mean, I agree with this. I'm not in favor of a one-party state. I think that would be very bad for the United States, but I mean, it's an advantage. Is it an advantage that I think should be taken seriously? No, but it is an advantage. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. I disagree. I don't trust big corporations with my data, and I am, every day, you give Twitter, YouTube, Google, Instagram access to your data. Facebook, I'm not on Facebook, but, there is that kind of going on. There's a theory that Snapchat, which I do unfortunately use, is when you send a snap of your face, there's a theory that they're trying to just develop facial recognition software for as many people as they can. So, that's not a great, I'm not comfortable with that. I try not to use, especially some of these apps like Instagram, Snapchat, I don't really care about too much, but, I try not to use them because I'm not sure if I trust using my data. And Facebook had the biggest issue in 2018. I think they had, they had to do a hearings in the United States Senate about whether they were selling data to other countries or to other companies without consenting the people that they were selling data at the expense of. So it's an issue for sure. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. I strongly disagree with this. So, the death penalty we see disproportionately affects minorities more than the majority of white people in America. We also see that the death penalty, in my opinion, is inhumane. I fundamentally believe that two wrongs don't make a right. So let's say a serial killer has been arrested, and they say, we're going to give you the death penalty. That serial killer is a terrible person because they have murdered many people in such cases. But unfortunately, for I think the black and white view that a lot of people have, killing him does not do any good to the people who have been harmed by him. If there's a way to undo it, I wish we go back in time to prevent those murders from happening, but you can't. So I think a life sentence in prison is the best, but I don't think that the government should have the ability to end anyone's life. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed, people below to be commanded. I disagree. You can't define what a civilized society is. Abstract art doesn't represent anything and shouldn't be considered art at all. Now, this is kind of an iffy question. It depends what you consider to be abstract art. I'm going to say agree because, I'll quote Ben Shapiro here, which is something I don't do a ton, but if you hand me a piece of blank paper and call it abstract art, then you're an idiot. And then there's also this arbitrary belief that anything is art and that you can do, like I can do a jumping jack and call that art. I don't believe that, but abstract art can be beautiful. I've seen many examples of abstract art. I know someone who does specialize in abstract art, so it is beautiful, but it really depends on what you consider as art. I was going to say agree, but not strongly agree, and I don't think that, it's really something we should be talking about too much. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. I strongly disagree with this. It is always a attempt to rehabilitate some criminals. I actually agree. There are a few criminals that I think we should not waste our time rehabilitating, but the vast majority of criminals should be rehabilitated and, try to be back on track, especially if it's like a minor drug offense where you're in jail for, a year or two or something. I believe that you can really see a lot of a lot of good things coming out of people who've gone to prison and become better people. And, there are good stories of that. I'm not saying it always happens, but, I think that there are a lot of good things that you can do with people who are in prison. Training them for future jobs is a good example. The business person, the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. I disagree with this. I don't think either is more important. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. I disagree with this. I think that, mothers can be homemakers, so can fathers, so can any parent or guardian, but it's not my job to define what a mother's first job is. So I'm going to say disagree with this question, or with this proposition, I guess. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. I strongly agree with this. I think it's pretty obvious that companies don't really care about people, especially in other countries, and they are absolutely exploiting people from other countries. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I disagree with this. It can be, but it isn't always an important aspect of maturity. If you get through that okay, you'll find these propositions on religion a breeze. Astrology accurately explains many things. This is a question I don't like to answer because, I can't say yes or no. I don't do astrology, so I'm going to say disagree, but I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know everything, so astrology could absolutely be the key to predicting everything in the universe. I don't know. Unfortunately for me, I don't know. So I'm going to say disagree, but I could absolutely be wrong. This is a question I think should be removed from the test. You cannot be moral without being religious. I strongly disagree with this. So I personally am a religious person, but you absolutely can be moral without being religious. And I think that, people who say that religious people that 100% of religious people are moral and that everyone else is 0% moral, I think that's a really flawed statement. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping disadvantaged. So I agree with this, but I don't think we should abolish Social Security. For sure, absolutely not. Some people are just naturally unlucky. I mean, I'm not sure if I agree or disagree with this, to be honest. I mean, I'll say agree, but, I guess the other option would be saying that people are cursed, which I certainly don't believe. So I'm going to say agree, but I guess just some people just have to be unlucky. I do believe that what goes around does come around, and I've actually seen this in my life where I'll do something stupid, and then, like, a day later, something stupid happens to me, so, I guess I believe in that. So I guess it's kind of a natural circle. It's important that my child's school instills religious values, so I actually don't have a child, but, I'd say disagree. I don't have, obviously, I don't have in-depth future plans for myself, but I don't really care if my child goes to religious school or not. It really depends on where I am in, X amount of years, so I'm going to say no. Okay, so this page might have some sensitive topics on it. If you want to skip through it, you can. Okay, we've got this question. So, I'm going to say disagree, because, actually, no, I'll say strongly disagree. I didn't fully process the question, so it really just comes down to my body, my choice. If it's consensual, I don't think there's a problem with it, to be completely honest. I say, excuse me, a same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. I agree. I think it's about time that we, stop debating on whether gay couples should be given the same rights as straight couples, and, look towards more important issues, or not more important, I shouldn't say that, but I think that we should not be having this conversation in 2021, because, science has proved that gay couples do basically the same job raising children that straight couples do, and people say, oh, you need a mother. Why do you need a mother? It's a waste of time to talk about this when we could easily be moving on and, just accepting that gay couples are fine and that they should be able to adopt children and be treated equally, because if not, I do believe that if you answer no, gay couples should not be allowed to adopt children, I think that that's a conclusion you're getting. I'm not saying you're homophobic, but I think that the conclusion that you're getting is homophobic. Okay, here we go. So, I'm not a fan of this question because I think it's inappropriate, and I think, these tests, not all these questions are great, but I'm going to say agree because, it should be regulated because if you ban it, you can't regulate it. I think there should be regulations, I guess. But I wouldn't support banning it because I think that is, I think that's an infringement in people, if the government tried to ban that, I think that there would be, a lot of talk about whether that's, because I believe that the First Amendment is freedom of speech, so you can't there are people who argue that that's art and that's freedom of speech. So I'm gonna say agree it should be legal. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Yeah, I agree with this. As long as it's consensual. Agreed. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I strongly disagree with this. I think there was a study that showed that 1 in 7 millennials identify as LGBTQ+, many of which are, I'm assuming, gay or lesbian. So, of course, you can feel naturally homosexual. And people have been naturally homosexual for, for as long as humans have existed, but we've only been talking about it in, like, the last 100 years because people have started to talk about it more because they started to come out. It's important. So, yeah. There's also evidence that animals are homosexual anyways, so, there was an argument that, only humans are homosexual. There's actually been evidence of homosexuality in hundreds of species of animals, too, so I strongly disagree with this. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I agree. I think that there is a certain fusion of, I guess, openness about sex. And, for the record, I'm all for sex education in school. It's not fun. I've been there. I've been sitting in the classroom awkwardly, but it's important. And by the way, it's important because it decreased the number of abortions that we have, accidental pregnancies, rape. It's important to raise awareness about sex because it's been a topic that's been neglected. Because it's awkward to talk about, but it's important to talk about. So I agree with this because I think there is to a certain extent on the internet, in music videos or things being sexualized when they shouldn't be sexualized, but we still need to talk about it. So I'm going to say agree, but very slight agree. Let's see where I stand on the political compass. So this is what it is. So I am a libertarian left, which does not surprise me, and I'm pretty in the middle. I'm not, I think I took this test, I first took this test, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. I remember being kind of over here, so I've certainly moved towards the center as I have aged, so I guess that's my political compass. Now you see it. Cool. So so thank you for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.